Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to rank all bosses in Batman Arkham Knight in an in-depth detail from worst to best. As most of you know, Arkham Knight has by far the worst boss fights in the whole series, but at least there are few good ones here. Also, there will be spoilers here, so you have been warned. Anyway, take a good seat on your chair and enjoy the video. In number 9 position, I have ranked Cloudburst Tank as a worst boss fight in Arkham Knight, and here are the reasons. The first reason is repetitiveness and monotony. The fight heavily relies on the Batmobile's tank mode, which many players found repetitive. The Batmobile is used extensively throughout the game, and by the time players reach the Cloudburst Tank boss fight, the novelty has worn off. Lack of variety. The fight does not introduce new mechanics or innovative gameplay elements, making it feel like an extended version of previous tank battles. The second reason is difficulty and frustration. The Cloudburst Tank has powerful attacks that can destroy the Batmobile quickly. The fight requires precise timing and movement, which can be very challenging. Unforgiving nature. Any mistake can lead significant damage, and there are limited opportunities to recover or repair the Batmobile, leading to repeated failures and frustration. The third reason is disconnection from the core gameplay. The fight shifts focus away from Batman's traditional skills of stealth, combat and detective work, relying instead on vehicular combat. This shift can feel jarring and out of place. Players expected a more balanced use of Batman's abilities. The over-reliance on the Batmobile in this boss fight and throughout the game detracts from core elements that fans of the series enjoy. The fourth reason is length and pacing. Extended battle duration. The fight is prolonged with multiple phases that require consistent high performance. This length can make the battle feel tedious rather than exciting. Pacing issues. The lengthy battle disrupts the overall pacing of the game, potentially diminishing the intensity and flow of narrative at a critical point. And the fifth reason is design and visuals. Visual overload. The battle involves numerous projectiles, explosions and effects which can clutter the screen and make it difficult to track the action and respond appropriately. Confusing design. The environment and visual effects can sometimes obscure important details, leading to confusion and additional difficulty. And the final and sixth reason is lack of narrative impact. Weaker story integration. Unlike other boss fights in the game that are tightly woven into story and character arcs, the Cloudburst Tank fight feels more like a gameplay hurdle rather than meaningful narrative climax. Missed opportunities. The potential for a more character-driven confrontation with Arkham Knight is lost in favor of mechanical and impersonal tank battle. So, in summary, Cloudburst Tank boss fight in Arkham Knight is, in my opinion, worst boss fight in the game due to its repetitive nature, high difficulty, deviation from core gameplay, poor pacing, visual overload, and weaker narrative impact. These factors combine to create frustrating and less engaging experience, detracting from overall enjoyment of the game. In number 8 position, I have ranked Drill boss fight, and it's in my opinion one of the worst boss fight in this game after Cloudburst Tank. And the reasons are repetitive mechanics. The boss fight involves evading the Arkham Knight's massive drill vehicle throughout the tunnels of Gotham City. The fight boils down to a series of chase sequences where the player must repeatedly dodge the drill's attacks. This repetitive mechanic lacks the dynamic variety seen in other boss fights in the game. Second reason is lack of direct combat. Unlike most boss fights in Arkham series, which emphasize Batman's combat prowess and gadget use, this encounter is entirely vehicle-based. Player Players control the Batmobile, which is innovative, removes the hand-to-hand combat element that fans love about Batman series. This departure from core gameplay can feel extremely unsatisfying. The third reason is frustrating controls. The Batmobile controls, particularly in tight, confined spaces like tunnels, can be difficult to manage. These players often struggle with precise driving and quick maneuvers, leading to frustration and sense that game's controls are working against them rather than enhancing the experience. The fourth reason is tedious design. The drill boss fight is designed in a way that can feel tedious and unnecessarily prolonged. The repeated need to evade and escape the drill without much variation in strategy makes the encounter feel like chore rather than exciting challenge. This can lead to a lack of engagement and a desire to simply get past the section as quickly as possible. The fifth reason is poor pacing. The fight pacing can be jarring, disrupting the flow of the game. It interrupts the narrative and the natural progression of the gameplay with lengthy, monotonous sequence. This break in momentum can detract from overall experience, making the boss fight feel out of place. The sixth reason is lack of character interaction. In many Arkham series boss fights, there is significant character interaction with dialogue and cutscenes that build tension and deepen the story. The drill boss fight lacks this element, making it feel disconnected from the rich narrative context that surrounds other encounters in the game. And the final reason is underwhelming conclusion. The payoff for completing the drill boss fight is not as satisfying as other major encounters in the game. The lack of climactic ending to the fight leaves players feeling unfulfilled, especially after enduring a frustrating and repetitive sequence. So overall, the drill boss fight in Arkham Knight is one of the worst boss fights in the whole game, with its repetitive mechanics, frustrating controls, poor pacing, deviation from core elements that make Arkham series enjoyable. These factors combine to create experience that many players, me included, finds the weakest and one of the most unenjoyable parts of the game. In number 7 position is Albert King. An Albert King boss fight in Arkham Knight is often criticized for several reasons, which collectively contribute to its reputation as one of the worst boss fights in the game. And here are the reasons. First reason, repetition of combat mechanics. The fight with Albert King lacks originality in terms of mechanics. It heavily relies on same free-flow combat system that players use throughout the game, without introduction of new challenges or strategies. This makes the fight feel repetitive and uninspired. The second reason is lack of unique identity. Albert King, also known as Goliath, doesn't have strong identity or backstory with game's narrative. Unlike iconic villains like Joker, Scarecrow, or even Arkham Knight himself, Albert King doesn't resonate with players on a personal or thematic level, making the fight feel less meaningful. The third reason is overuse of quick time events. The boss fight incorporates quick time events, which can be frustrating for players who prefer skill-based combat. These quick time events break the flow of the fight and can feel like cheap way to add difficulty rather than genuinely challenging the player. The fourth reason is crowd control over challenge. Instead of focusing on intense one-on-one battle, the fight involves managing crowd of enemies alongside Albert King. This shifts the challenge from a memorable boss fight to a standard crowd control situation, diminishing the impact of the boss. Fifth reason is predictability and lack of innovation. Players can predict and encounter Albert King's moves relatively easily, making the fight lack the tension and excitement that comes from more unpredictable and varied boss encounters. The fight doesn't introduce any new mechanics or innovations, making it feel stale. And the final reason is environment and setting. The fight takes place in an environment that doesn't significantly differ from other combat arenas in the game. The setting doesn't add any unique elements or atmosphere to the battle. which could have made it more memorable or better. So, in summary, Albert King boss fight in Arkham Knight is seen as one of the worst boss fights in the game. Not as bad as Drill or Cloudburst Tank, but still one of the worst boss fights in the game, due to its repetitive mechanics, lack of narrative significance, reliance quick-time events, crowd control focus, predictability, and uninspired environment. These factors combine to create a fight that feels more like a chore than an exciting and memorable confrontation. In number 6 position is Two-Face. And Two-Face is, in my opinion, pretty disappointing boss fight. And the reasons is lack of challenge and innovation. Repetition. The fight primarily involves Batman taking down Two-Face's henchmen silently in series of Predator encounters, similar to other stealth sections throughout the game. This makes the encounter feel repetitive and lacks the unique challenge often expected in boss fights. Simplicity. Unlike other villains who have intricate battles that require diverse strategies, the Two-Face encounter doesn't push the player to adapt or use different abilities. The mechanics are straightforward and don't evolve as the fight progresses. The second reason is minimal interaction with Two-Face. Limited engagement. The player doesn't interact much with Two-Face himself. Most of the time is spent dealing with his goons, making it feel less like a direct confrontation with major villain and more like standard stealth mission. Absence of character depth. The fight doesn't delve deeply into Two-Face's character or his duality theme. There's a missed opportunity to explore his psychological complexity or his split personality in the gameplay. The third reason is comparison with other boss fights. Higher standards set by other encounters. The game features more memorable and better boss fights, such as encounters with Arkham Knight or Scarecrow, which have unique mechanics and storytelling elements. In comparison, Two-Face's fight feels really underwhelming. Previous games' expectations. In earlier games in the series, boss fights were often more elaborate and engaging. Players had to come to expect intricate battles that involved unique mechanics tailored to each villain's characteristics, which the Two-Face fight lacks. The final reason is narrative impact. Anticlimactic. The build-up to confrontation Two-Face suggests a significant showdown, but actual encounter lacks the dramatic tension and payoff, making it feel anticlimactic. Lack of resolution. The fight doesn't significantly advance the story or provide a satisfying resolution to Two-Face's arc, leaving players feeling unfulfilled. So overall, Two-Face boss fight in Arkham Knight is, in my opinion, really disappointing because it doesn't meet expectations set by the game's other encounters, lacks depth and challenge, and fails to provide meaningful or memorable conclusion to the character's story. In number 5th position is the Firefly, and it's often considered one of the most disappointing encounters in the game for several reasons. The first reason is repetitive gameplay. The Firefly boss fight involves a high-speed chase using the Batmobile, where players need to catch up to Firefly and ram his vehicle multiple times. This chase sequence is repeated several times throughout the game without much variation, making the encounters feel monotonous and uncreative. The second reason is lack of depth and challenge. The fight doesn't offer much depth in terms of strategy or combat. It primarily relies on the Batmobile's driving mechanics, which can become tedious, especially for players who prefer hand-to-hand combat or gadget-based encounters. The lack of diverse mechanics in the fight makes it less engaging and challenging. The third reason is minimal interaction with Firefly. Unlike other boss fights fights in the game, where Batman directly engages with his enemies in combat. The Firefly encounter lacks significant interaction between Batman and Firefly. This results in a less personal and impactful confrontation, missing out on the potential for a more memorable and dramatic showdown. The fourth reason is underwhelming conclusion. After successfully chasing down and catching Firefly, the fight ends in quick takedown, which feels anticlimactic. There is no elaborate final battle or unique finishing sequence that would make the encounter stand out. This abrupt end contributes to the overall sense of disappointment. The fifth reason is recycling of mechanics. The Firefly chase sequences do not introduce new mechanics or variation in each encounter. This recycling of the same chase mechanics across multiple missions lead to a feeling of repetition and lack of innovation, which diminishes the excitement and thrill that a boss fight should ideally provide. And the final reason is expectation versus reality. Given Firefly's potential as a character with his pyrotechnic abilities and the opportunity for a spectacular and intense fight, the actual execution falls short of players' expectations. Fans of the series anticipated a more dynamic and engaging battle similar to other well-designed boss fights in Arkham series. These factors collectively contribute to why Firefly boss fight in Arkham Knight is often viewed as one of the most disappointing encounters in the game. In number 4th position is Jason Todd, aka Arkham Knight, and in my opinion it's a kinda disappointing boss fight. The reasons are underwhelming gameplay mechanics. The boss fight primarily involves stealth sections where Batman must avoid detection and perform takedowns on Jason Todd, who is armed with sniper rifle. This approach is quite different from the more dynamic and intense combat-based boss fights that players might expect, leading to a less engaging experience. The second reason is predictability. The fight's mechanics are repetitive and predictable. Jason follows a set pattern, and once players understand his movements and actions, the challenge diminishes significantly. This lack of variety can make the fight feel tedious. Third reason is lack of emotional impact. Given the deep and complex backstory between Batman and Jason Todd, the fight doesn't deliver the emotional weight that narrative build-up suggests. The resolution of their conflict is mainly throughout cutscenes rather than interactive gameplay, which can feel anticlimactic. The fourth reason is missed potential for character development. Jason Todd's transformation into the Arkham Knight and his subsequent revelation as the Red Hood are pivotal moments in the story. However, the boss fight doesn't fully capitalize on these developments. The encounter doesn't delve deeply into Jason's emotional turmoil or his relationship with Batman, missing an opportunity for richer storytelling. The fifth reason is comparison to other boss fights. In comparison to other boss fights in the Arkham series, which is often via unique and memorable mechanics such as Scarecrow fear-inducing hallucinations or battle against Mr. Freeze in Arkham City, the Jason Todd fight feels lackluster and less creative. So, overall, the disappointment stems from a combination of uninspired gameplay mechanics, a lack of emotional resonance, and missed opportunities for deeper character exploration, all of which contribute to a boss fight that doesn't meet high expectations set by the game's narrative and the franchise history. Okay, and finally we get to the good stuff, the good boss fights in Arkham Knight. And in number 3rd position, we have Professor Pyg. And it is one of the best boss fights in the whole game. And the first reason is atmosphere and setting. The fight takes place in Pyg's Nightwing Amusement Mile hideout, a disturbing and eerie environment filled with surgical tools, bloodstains, and twisted dolls. This setting enhances the creepy and unsettling nature of Professor Pyg, immersing players deeply into the encounter. The second reason is character design. Professor Pyg is one of the most grotesque and physiologically disturbing villains in Batman universe. His character design and the voice acting in Arkham Knight amplify his deranged personality, making the boss fight more intense and memorable. The third reason is unique gameplay mechanics. The fight against Professor Pyg isn't just about brute force. It involves a strategic element where players must take down Pyg's Dollotron minions who are resistant to regular attacks. Players need to use specific techniques to incapacitate them before going after Pyg himself, adding a layer of tactical depth to the battle. Fourth reason is narrative impact. The encounter with Professor Pyg is more than just a fight. It's a culmination of disturbing side missions where Batman uncovers the extent of Pyg's gruesome activities. This narrative build-up makes the boss fight more meaningful and satisfying when players finally confront and defeat him. The fifth reason is psychological horror. The psychological horror elements in the fight, such as Pyg's disturbing dialogue and the grotesque appearance of his Dollotrons, add to the tension and create a memorable, spine-chilling experience. This differentiates it from other boss fights that may rely on physical combat and spectacle. The final reason is integration with detective work. Leading up to the boss fight, players engage in detective work, piecing together clues and solving crimes related to Pyg. This integration of detective gameplay with the final confrontation makes the encounter feel like a natural and rewarding conclusion to the investigation. Overall, the Professor Pyg boss fight in Arkham Knight is one of the best boss fights in the whole game for a variety of reasons like atmospheric horror, unique gameplay mechanics, and strong narrative ties, making it a standout moment in the game. In number second position, I have ranked Riddler. And Riddler boss fight in Arkham Knight is one of the best boss fights in the game. The first reason is complexity and challenge. The Riddler challenges Batman not just physically but also intellectually. The boss fight is culmination of series of intricate puzzles and Riddlers scattered throughout Gotham City. This aspect adds depth and sense of accomplishment as players must solve all of the Riddler's challenges to reach the final confrontation. The second reason is integration of gameplay mechanics. The Riddler boss fight effectively integrates multiple gameplay mechanics. It combines puzzle solving, combat, and Batmobile sequences. Players need to switch between Batman and Batmobile, using both characters' unique abilities to navigate Riddler's elaborate death traps. This multifaceted approach keeps the fight engaging and dynamic. Third reason, narrative build-up. The Riddler's presence is felt throughout the game, with his taunts and challenges, creating a continuous subplot. By the time players reach the boss fight, there's a strong narrative payoff. The gradual build-up makes the confrontation more satisfying and meaningful within the context of the story. The fourth reason is character and thematic consistency. The Riddler boss fight stays true to the character of Edward Nygma, known for his obsession with puzzles and providing his intellectual superiority over Batman. The final battle encapsulates his personality perfectly. Thematically, it reinforces the ongoing battle of wits between Batman and the Riddler. The fifth reason is environment design. The environment where the boss fight takes place is meticulously designed to reflect the Riddler's character. The traps, the neon lights, and the overall aesthetics all contribute to creating an atmosphere that is uniquely Riddler's. This attention to detail enhances immersion and overall experience of the fight. The sixth reason is rewarding the player. The Riddler boss fight is rewarding because it is not just single encounter but the climax of a long quest line. Collecting all Riddler trophies and solving his puzzles is significant undertaking. The sense of achievement upon finally facing and defeating the Riddler is substantial, giving players a feeling of having completed one of the game's most challenging aspects. The seventh reason is replayability. Due to its complexity and requirement to solve numerous puzzles beforehand, the Riddler boss fight offers high replayability. Players may miss some details on their first attempt and may want to replay it to experience full breadth of the encounter. So in conclusion, Riddler boss fight in Arkham Knight stands out because it is well-rounded, challenging and thematically rich confrontation that ties together various elements of gameplay and story. It is true test of the player's skills and intellect, providing a memorable and satisfying conclusion to one of the game's major storylines. And in the number first position, we have the Killer Croc. And it's, in my opinion, the best boss fight in the whole game. And the first reason is why is atmosphere and setting. The fight takes place in depths of Iron Heights Penitentiary, an environment that perfectly suits Killer Croc's character. The dark, claustrophobic corridors coupled with eerie, unsettling ambience build up sense of dread and tension. This atmospheric design immerses players deeply into the confrontation. The second reason is narrative integration. The encounter with Killer Croc ties seamlessly into the overarching narrative of the game and the Season of Infamy DLC. The storyline involving the mutated Croc escaping the captivity and wreaking havoc adds depth to his character, making the fight feel like natural and significant part of the story rather than a random encounter. The third reason is challenge and mechanics. The boss fight itself presents a balanced challenge. Players must use combination of combat skills, gadgets and environmental interactions to defeat Croc. This requires strategic thinking and quick reflexes, ensuring the fight is engaging and demanding without feeling unfair. Fourth reason is character development. The Killer Croc's transformation and backstory are explored in greater detail during this fight. Players learn about his increased mutation and emotional turmoil he endures, adding layers to his character and making the fight feel more than just a physical confrontation. The fifth reason is cinematic presentation. The fight is designed with cinematic flair, featuring dramatic cutscenes and intense action sequences. This presentation enhances the overall experience, making the battle feel epic and memorable. The sixth reason is cooperative gameplay. The fight involves cooperative gameplay elements, with Batman teaming up with Nightwing. This not only adds variety to the game combat mechanics but also strengthens the sense of teamwork and camaraderie between characters. The seventh reason is pacing and build-up. The build-up to the fight is well-paced, with players encountering signs of Croc's presence and his victims along the way. This gradual build-up heightens the anticipation and makes the eventual confrontation more impactful. So in overall, Killer Croc boss fight in Arkham Knight is stand out due to its atmospheric setting, narrative interaction, challenging mechanics, character development, cinematic presentation, cooperative gameplay and effective pacing. And these reasons makes it the best boss fight in the whole game. Okay, that was my ranking of all Arkham Knight bosses from worst to best. What did you think about this list? Comment your own list down below, and if you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe. Also, I have done same type of ranking videos about Arkham Asylums, cities and Origins bosses. So go check those videos out next. And thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.